Hi, in this video I'll be demonstrating how to replace the washers on these taps. Right, just make sure you've turned off your water. Now that the water's been turned off, I just release some of the water pressure by opening the taps. I can let this fill up a bucket and I can just put this into the garden. Now in order to change the washer I need to remove the handle. So there's a screw here, this happens to be a flat screw. So I'm just going to remove that. Now here's the screw, it fell into my bucket, and just a reminder, it's always a good idea to plug the basin just in case important parts fall in the drain. Now I can twist this cover off. Now this has already been damaged, somebody has been a bit rough here. And take a bit of rubber, this is a bicycle tube, and just wrap it round there. And then I take a vice grip and I tighten over that, and then I can open this without damaging and scuffing this cover. Right, so there's the cover which has now been removed. Now I just give this a bit of a wipe, and now I need to remove this. So I'm going to take my shifting spanner and I'm going to rotate this anti-clockwise. Right, I now have access to the washer. Right, this washer has become very rigid. It's got no flexibility at all. I'm just removing the washer and the shaft. There it comes out. Right, and I take a vice grip and I grab the back there, the shaft part, and I make sure this is really tight. So this is tightly gripping that, and now I take my pliers and I get a very good grip on that nut and I turn it. Might need to take a sideways grip. Just make sure you get the whole face of the nut. Sometimes these nuts are brittle, and I just go slowly and I turn it. If you want, you can spray some lubrication just to help it. A socket set's very good, or a combination spanner, particularly the ring side, because it grips the nut all around the surface. Right, now that the nut is off, I can take out this washer. Right, just inspecting the washer, how I know it's worn. Firstly, it becomes oversized. So this is the replacement washer, and notice how the older washer is much wider than the replacement. The next thing is it has these deep ridges along there. You might even find that it's perished a bit. The other thing is the texture. It's become like plastic. It's got no flexibility. Right, so now I just seat the brand new washer. I can see it's the right size because it's the same size as the metal padding at the back. Now I can return the nut. Right, now the nut starts to engage into the washer. Once it's engaged into the washer, I do half a turn. And that is it. I don't want the nut to deform the washer. Right, so I make sure there was no scuffs on this shaft over here. Right, I can now insert that back in there. And I just inspect the mechanism. It's working very well. And I take a little bit of petroleum jelly and I just put it on the threads there. This is not a mandatory step. I just like to do this. Just have a look at the platform where the washer will sit. It's this part at the bottom here. I'm just checking if there's any damage to it, like for example a groove. If it has a groove or it is damaged, you would need to grind it down. Here's an example of a damaged seat. If you'd like to see how to flatten that seat, please check out my video on that topic. Right, and I just inspect this ring washer. If it is deformed at all or in pieces, replace with a new one. I can now return this part. Right, I can now return this. And when I return this, I make sure that the tap is loosened anti-clockwise. This part is almost fully anti-clockwise, so the tap is open. Now I take my shifting spanner and I tighten this. When it gets tight, I just go 1/16th turn, and that's it. I can now return the cover and I'll just tighten it. Right, I can now return the screw. Right, the washer is now renewed. Now on this side I have a little problem. This cover is so tight that when I loosen it, the whole tap wants to come undone. That is fine, you can still repair the tap even if this does not separate from the part underneath. For example, I've loosened this now and look what happens. It's like it's stuck to the part underneath. You can still repair the washer following the same principles. Just make sure that the seal over here is in good condition, and then once you've repaired the washer, just open the tap almost to the full open position and then just put this back in. I'm effectively using that to put the tap back in rather than the nut underneath. Right, now I can just close the tap. It will still work correctly. Thanks for watching and cheers.